Just like when you're a child and even when you're an adult, but you go to therapy, and in therapy they ask you about your childhood, because the more you understand where you came from, the more you understand your parents' experience, the more you understand where you came from, the more you can understand where you are now, and the more empowered you can feel about going forward because you know where you've been. So I think that taking a good look at the founding of our country, where we started, where we've come to, gives us tremendous power and understanding of where we need to go now. In 1776, 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence declared in founding documents in a way that had never been done in the world some foundational principles that were revolutionary. They were not only revolutionary politically, they were revolutionary morally, they were revolutionary spiritually, that all men are created equal, and that all men have the God-given right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That all men should have an opportunity to spread their wings and actualize their own God-given potential. And that's where it started, but that's also where it got gnarly. Because out of the 56 signers of the Declaration, 41 of them were slave owners. That's it right there. That contest and that struggle right there, it is a characterological aspect of the American mind that is bipolar, that on one level stands for the most aspirational and enlightened principles that have ever formed the founding of a country, and at the same time, from the very beginning, it has never not been true. And this struggle is encapsulated in our politics today as much as it has ever been at any time, even at the beginning. Because even though there have been people who were willing to sacrifice their lives to take a stand for those enlightened principles, there have been forces. They were with us then, and they're with us now, that were willing to transgress, even in the most violent and wicked ways, against the principles on which we purport to stand. And every generation in American history, ours no less than any other, has lived out that struggle. Now, the good news is, over time, we tend to self-correct. Americans responded to slavery with abolition, and Americans responded to the institutional suppression of women with the women's suffragette movement. We responded to segregation with the civil rights movement. So over time, as desperately dark and painful and as filled with human suffering as some of the aspects of American history have been, there have been people in every generation that have taken the wheel, have pushed back against the forces that were transgressing against our principles, and did what it took to get this country back on track. It is simply our turn. Now, I was a child, but I was old enough to remember Bobby Kennedy taking a stand against the Vietnam War, taking a stand against the military-industrial complex. Martin Luther King taking a stand against racial injustice. And there was a sense of hope in those years because we saw people within the political realm, Bobby, Martin, and others, who truly represented in political terms the higher aspirational principles of America. They killed them. And everything that we feared would happen with those men's death has come to pass. 1968, they died. In 1980, Ronald Reagan was elected president, and with that came Reaganomics, or trickle-down economics. Now, hear me on this. When you have the wicked transgression against the principles on which we stand encapsulated within an institution, then it is as though that institution is like an operable tumor. You have slavery, we know what we need to do, abolish slavery. You have the suppression of women, we know what we need to do, give women the right to vote. You have segregation and all of the domestic terrorism against Black people that followed for 100 years after the Civil War. We knew what we had to do, pass civil rights legislation and the Voting Rights Act. But what has happened now is something even more insidious, because it's not one institution, it's an economic mindset. It's not an operable cancer. It's more like a cancer that has metastasized and has wrapped itself around healthy organs. With what happened in trickle-down economics, led by the guys from University of Chicago, although interestingly enough, the main articulator of trickle-down economics, a man named Milton Friedman, himself said, but none of this will work without a universal basic income. Well, people who promulgated trickle-down economics left that part out, of course. And they said that the U.S. corporation should have no moral or ethical responsibility to people or to planet. Because you see, before then, social consensus was that it should. You see, before then, it's not like America was ever all good, but I remember a time when the social consensus was that at least we should try. With trickle-down economics, the idea was that all the responsibility of the corporation would be the short-term profits for the stockholder class and all other stakeholders, the workers, the earth itself, the community, and the environment, and everything was to accrue to the stockholders. And then they would make so much money that all that money would trickle down and it would lift all boats. After 40 years, we know what happened. It did not lift all boats. As a matter of fact, it left millions of people without even a life vest. It created such a massive transfer of wealth into the hands of 1% as to have completely devastated the middle class in this country. And what it created was a new aristocracy in this country. We have reverted. Just like in 1776, we chose democracy over aristocracy, we have reverted to aristocracy. It is now a corporate aristocracy. It is health insurance companies. It is big pharmaceutical companies. It is big oil. It is food companies. It is chemical companies. It is the National Rifle Association, gun manufacturers, and of course, it is the military-industrial complex. In 1776, there were enough people who were willing to stand up to aristocracy, and as I said before, it's our turn.